All right, it's time to do some refactoring. When I work on my games, I usually make my system good enough, or I just say it does the job. But at some point, I might need to refactor some stuff so I can write new code without breaking everything and make the code more manageable. So if I would try to design the perfect system right away, I would never start or finish any project, probably. When you code a new system, you want to iterate quickly to test if it's what you need. If you spend a month on it and in the end you don't even use it, well, it might be hard for the motivation. I feel like most people lose their motivation when they get to a point where they don't know how to implement new features or modify an existing one because the current code was not planned for it. For example, this refactor, I did it twice. The first time, there were too many bugs to fix, and the inventory became a bit too hard to use. So I reverted all the changes and restarted from the end of the last part. Then, when I did it again, I had the same goal in mind, but this time I think I did a lot better. So, let me show you what is the problem and the solution I went with. The problem is that the UI and data are in the same script, so when an inventory is created anywhere in the game, it instantiates a node for it, even if it doesn't have to be shown. And in the last part, I had to do a little trick to avoid to have too many orphans node, which could be a big problem. We could have a memory leak that could crash the game if it runs for a long time. Each inventory has slots. Each slots can have an item. Let's say you load a scene where you are in a town with shops, a bank, and NPCs with inventories. You might have a lot of nodes to handle. Instead, we will split the inventory data and code from the UI. We'll place the data in a resource script so we can have as many inventories and items we want. And then, when we want to display them, we can simply show the ones we need. We won't have any orphans node because when we show an inventory, the UI will be instantiated with the data. Then when we hide it, we simply free the UI and the resource stays as it was in the memory. So let's begin with a little cleanup. It's not really needed, but I want to place everything for the inventory in its own folder. So you can follow along if you want, but you can also keep your own folder structure. Let me create the folders. I have the inventory system folder, and inside of it I have the managers folder, I have the resources, anything that is simply image or font and stuff like that, resources, and inside I'll transfer a few things. I'll have the scenes folder. This is going to be all the visible stuff, the packed scene, so the inventory panel will go in there, and I'll have a script folder. So right now we can already transfer the data inside the inventory system. The font will go in resources. Interactable, this one I can transfer all the image. So the bag, chest, gold chest, table, I'll bring that into interactables inside of sprites. And later I'll come here and transfer them in their correct folder. Inside the inventory folder, I have some sprites here. I'll bring all of them in the sprites. And there's also the items folder here that has a sprites folder. So I'll create a item folder. So I'll bring the items sprites in here. So I can remove this folder, sprites, delete. All right, so yeah, the other scripts, I'll move them as we update them. Okay, so now let's start breaking everything. Anything that has to do with inventories will be broken down. Let's start with the item itself. So if I find the item script, items, and item GD. Before, we were simply creating an instance from the script, but now we will make a scene for the item. I'll create a new scene. I'll make it a texture rect. This one, double click. And now the item script here, I'll rename it. So rename, I'll name it item node, and rename. And now I'll take this one and I'll bring it in scripts, and it's gonna be inventory, item node, inventory. And then I'll attach this script to the item, texture rect, and I can rename that item node. And if I look at it, there's nothing here. But now we can add stuff here instead of generating it with the code, like the quantity. So if I look at that, quantity, we have a scene. So if I bring this scene here on the item, now we can simply add it right now, and we don't need this quantity anywhere else. So we can right click that, make local, it's here now, and we'll remove the script. So the item itself will deal with its own quantity. So now we can simply delete the quantity scene and delete. Now it's telling us that the resource manager is using it, but we'll remove it from there also. So remove that and remove the script. So let's save this scene. I'll save it in inventory system, scenes, inventory, item node. Save that. Now let's go in the code. Now I'm gonna change the class name. Instead of item, it's gonna be item node. I'll create a new item script, but this one I'll create it in my scripts, resources, and item. So new script, and this one will be item create. So this new script item will be only the data and functions. Then the item node will only be the visual stuff, what we can see when we open an inventory, for example. So there's two ways we could do that. I could start from scratch and write code and make sure the item behaves like before and try not to forget anything. Or I could just copy the code from the item node and remove anything that is about the UI and try not to get confused in the mess. But I'll start with copying the code and clean up. So let's copy everything and bring that in here. Now this one will be the item and it will extend resource. Save that. Now as we're breaking stuff, Godot will give us a lot of errors, but we'll have to go through it. So let's start with the item node. If I go back in here, this one, it's not gonna be using the data for the item anymore. It's gonna basically only use one item resource. So the only variable it's gonna have, it's gonna be item, which is a type item. Now, since the item script is not fixed yet, it's gonna tell us that there's a problem, but we'll just keep going. The initialize function will not be used. This is when you initialize the data. The ready function will be used because this is only used in the tree here. So we'll keep this one and I'll add some comments. So this one, the ready function will draw the item and connect the signals. The set quantity will be done by the item script. So I'll remove this one, add item quantity also. The get name, don't need this. Set slot, nope. Destroy, nope. Get data and get stats. So yeah, all of this. For now, we'll just have the ready function. So yeah, let's go in the item script now. We'll keep pretty much all of these. The labeled quantity will not be used anymore. We'll just deal with the quantity itself. And when the quantity change, then we'll notify the item node and it will update its quantity in the UI itself. So yeah, we don't need the label. Item slot and item data, I'll remove those and I'll only keep one variable here for slot. So which slot the item is in right now. And this is going to be a type inventory slot. So then we'll be able to get information on where the item is or something like that. Now here for the initialize, I'm going to move this in the item manager. But for now, let's keep it here. The ready function, we don't need this one because it's in the item node. A resource cannot use the underscore ready or process function. Remove this one. Set quantity, this one we still need it, but we will remove the destroy because if we go in the destroy, we queue free, but then we don't need to queue free a resource. If we don't use it anymore, Godot will free it itself. So remove this and we can destroy the destroy function. I'll add some comment here. So set quantity will set a new quantity and deal with signals. This one, add item quantity. This will add the given quantity to the item and return the remainder if the stack is full. Then get name. This will get the name of the item. If it's normal, it's going to be the base name. If it's magic, it's going to be the prefix plus name plus suffix. And if it's a rare or unique, it's going to be a new name. Then we go to set slot. This one will not be used anymore. Delete that. Get data will stay right there. So get data will pack the item data in a dictionary. So we can use it later when we load the game. And the last one, get stat, we'll keep it and it's calculate the total for a specific stat. All right, so now if we go back up, this mouse filter thing is something for the UI. But instead of just putting it here in the code or in the item node, we can just remove it and go in the item node itself. In the 2D view, we'll select the item node. We can add something. So let's see, chest plate. Let's put some image on it. Let's change the size. Let's put it at 16 by 16. That's the size of the item. And then if we go in the mouse, we can change that to ignore. So now we just set it directly on the node. All right, so save this. And if we go back in the script item, let's clean that up a bit. The item data, we won't need that anymore. The texture, this is a UI thing, we won't need it, so let's remove that. Yeah, here, the label quantity, we don't need this, so remove that. And everything else seems to be okay. Now, the initialize function will change that and will bring this in the item manager. So let's find the item manager. Let's select it, click the X. I'll bring this one in the managers, in the inventory system, and open it. Now here, there's going to be some broken path. Here, the data JSON, we'll have to change it. We'll add the inventory system. So those are okay. And now I need to change the placeholders for the equipment. And those are in resources, sprites. And they're here. And there you go. Those are fixed. All right, so here I'll also add some comments. So my initialize function will get a random seed for the random functions. So every time you start the game, that's for the randomize. The ready function will load the content of the data files. And then the get item here will build the item of the given ID. And now it's not gonna return a new item with the data. Instead, we'll build it right here and then return the item. So this is where I'll bring my initialize code. So I can cut everything here, delete the initialize. And now in here, just paste everything. Let's do data is equal to items ID. And then we'll have the item will be equal a new item.new. And then we just have the item.id is equal that. And we'll add this little item. We can change the item name now because before we couldn't use name because anything that inherits from a node will have a name for the node. And now since it's a resource file, we can add it. So let's go here. I'll change the item name for just name. Save that. Let's go back. And then we'll have the item level, the item type. So now I'll add the item to all the other variables. So the item are everywhere. And at the end of the function, we'll return item. There you go. And here I'll add another line. The usable, we'll have to change it because right now the usable item is a node, which is going in the components, but instead we'll change the usable item to be a resource also. So we'll add it here. So if the data has usable, then we'll add to the components the usable. All right, so that should be good for the get item. And this will return an item. Now it's not happy because the item script has some problem still. But yeah, let's continue. Get items. Build multiple items at once with the array of IDs. This will return an array of items. Next one, get item from data. This will build an item from a dictionary, so usually from item.getData. That's where we save the game, so when we load it, we can use this one. Now the placeholder, I think I'll move those in the resource manager because they're only images, so yeah, I'll switch them. Let's cut that, and let's go in the resource manager. Resource manager, I'll move this one too in the new managers folder, then open that, and let's put that at the bottom. Get placeholder, and here we'll have to bring also the dictionary for those placeholders. Cut that one, and I'll put it right there. Placeholders. And here we'll have to fix the path also. And there you go, I fixed the path for all of those. Now it's telling me that it can't preload the resource quantity here because I removed it. So let's remove it from here also. And let's see in the item script, since we changed the item name, it might have broken at some other places. So here it's just going to be name, and that should be good. Now there might be other places in the game, but we'll see as we go. So the item script is done. The item node, it tries to get an instance of quantity and set the label quantity to it. So this, we don't need it anymore. We'll change it instead. We'll do the label quantity as a export. So if we click our item node and go at the top, oh, well, yeah, we need to fix this. For the quantity, we'll have to change that a bit. we'll have a new signal, which is on quantity changed. So when the quantity of the item that we have changes, then we'll update the label here. So when we're ready, instead we'll call the function on quantity changed, and we'll just send the item dot quantity. Then we'll connect the signal. So all of these, we don't need to add child and anything like that. So there, item connect, and we'll connect the quantity change on the item, and we'll connect it on quantity change. We also need to listen to the depleted, then we'll need to remove it. So what we'll do is we'll listen to the depleted signal, we'll add the function right here. If the item is depleted, remove this node. And then here, we won't look at the usable like that anymore and get the component like this. Because here we have the item with the data, so we can simply check if it has the usable component. So here we'll remove all of that. And instead, if the item has the usable components, then on the usable component, we'll have a signal cooldown started. So we'll have to modify how that works, since the usable component will not be able to use the underscore, ready, or process, or anything like that. Yeah, we'll use a cooldown manager to deal with the cooldown. That will help for multiple items. So if we have an item in our hotbar and in our inventory, then the cooldown will be the same on both, since it's a copy of the item. So here we'll connect the signal in the signal manager, cooldown started, and when the cooldown start, we'll create a function here for that. If the item is in cooldown, then we'll have to show the cooldown, because if you have your item in your hand, then you put it in the inventory slot, it will create a item node, and it will have to create also the cooldown from where it is right now. So here, if the usable component is in cooldown, then we'll set cooldown. And let's create this function. So add an instance of the cooldown node, and then we'll set the data of the node, which we'll have to modify, and we'll add child. Before doing that, we'll add the other function, the onCooldown started. So if a cooldown has started and it's affecting this item, set the cooldown. So onCooldown started, usable, because the cooldown manager that we'll do could be used to add a global cooldown. Maybe you want to add a cooldown on all potions, then this is where you could listen if the component as usable, yes, and if the usable is the same, but here you could have instead is the same type, then we set the cooldown. But yeah, for now here we only check if it's the same one, like it was before. So let's find this cooldown. The image is already in the sprite, so that's correct. The cooldown script here, I'll bring it in scripts, but I need the folder UI. And here, so I'll take my cooldown, bring it in UI, and then the cooldown scene, and I'll bring it in UI. Now I'll create the cooldown manager right now. Now I'll go in my managers folder, and I'll add a new script, and this is going to be the cooldown manager. Let's do empty and create. So now this one I can right away go in my project settings and add it as a auto load. Select my inventory system, managers, and cooldown manager. And I'll click the add button and close. So in here, what we'll need first is all the usable currently in cooldown. But in your game, it could be skills or anything that can use cooldowns with a global timer. But yeah, the cooldown manager that I'm doing here is really simple. It's only a basic little cooldown manager, so all the usable item still works like they were before. So then, when a cooldown is activated, we'll add the usable to the list of the current cooldown. On cooldown started, the value will be the usable that was activated. If we don't find it, then we add it in the cooldown. Then when we start the game, we will just connect to that signal, so anything that calls cooldown started, we'll listen to it. And then to decrement the timer on each usable in cooldowns, we'll count down all active cooldown and turn them off when done with a process function. If we have anything in the cooldown, for each of those, we'll remove a bit of time. Then, for each of those, if they don't have any remaining time, then we'll set not in cooldown anymore and we'll remove it from the list. And that's it for this little cooldown manager. So if you would like to use this for all potion should be in cooldown, then it's probably in the cooldown here that you could add a type. Maybe it could be a dictionary where you track what type are in cooldown and for how long. And we'll see later on the usable item that instead of looking at if the item itself is in cooldown, you'll have to ask the cooldown manager to see if this type is in cooldown and something like that. But yeah, I won't do it in here. Now, if I find my cooldown scene and I open it, here we'll have to modify this a bit. We'll keep a reference to the item usable, which we'll set at the start here. Item usable is equal to the usable. Then this signal is not needed anymore. The max value is equal to the usable.cooldown, that's correct. Then if the usable is in cooldown, then the value of the texture progress will be equal to the remaining cooldown. Set the value of the progress. And then here instead of on cooldown tick, we'll use the process function with the delta, but we won't use it, so we can add a little underscore before so it doesn't appear as a warning, and we'll update the cooldown progress. So the value will be equal to the usable cooldown remaining. We could use a delta to decrement the progress itself with it, but I found that it's not synchronized perfectly with the item. So if we directly use the time remaining on the item, then it's perfect. Oh yeah, here it's item usable. Then the text will be equal to the same. And then if the remaining cooldown is lower or equal to 0, then remove this little cooldown and save that. All right, so since we completed the item and cooldown, I guess we could go and fix the usable item. If I go down here in the items usable, I have item healing and upgrade. I'll bring those in. And also the item usable script itself, I'll bring it in usable items. So now let's start with item usable. This here won't extend node, it will be resource. Then the signal are the same. The can use value here will not use the set can use anymore. Then here the process function, we don't need it anymore. This is in the item and cooldown. And this function, set data, will set the base data. Then here set can use will be removed. And then the get can use will change it is usable. And this will return a bool. Check if the item is usable. Basically, that's it. And here for the player, if the item is on the player, I will simplify it. So instead, I'm gonna ask the item if it's on the player. Is on player. Then I'll go on the item and add this function. So items before the get data. If this item is on the player, so is on player, return a boolean, and we'll just check if we have a slot and the slot has the group player. That's it. So let's go back. The use function, it will use the item if possible and start the cooldown if there is one. So here instead of get can use, it's going to be is usable and it's not in cooldown currently. Then we'll execute. Then this one will remove it. This was to add a cooldown to it. The get cooldown instance will remove that. The signal that we emit here, start cooldown, instead will ask the signal manager to emit that. So signal manager.emit signal start cooldown. But I'll change the name for cooldown started and we'll send self. So that's correct. So let's go in the signal manager. I'll put it right there. Signal cooldown started. And this will send a usable. All right, save that. Oh yeah, and since we opened the signal manager, I guess we can transfer it. So managers, signal manager, bring that in the managers folder. All right, so back in item usable, the execute function, this will execute the effect of the usable item. Must be implemented in the inherited script. So the healing potion or the upgrade kit on inventory group content change. When the content of the player's inventory change, emit the signal to notify it is usable or not. And here get can use has been changed. So is usable, then it's the get use text. Get the text to display to show the effect, and just like the execute, it must be implemented on the inherited script. I'll move this one at the bottom since it's a signal. Then we have set info, which only adds lines in the item info when you mouse over the item. And the get action returns the use function to be added in the item action. So the little menu when you right click an item. So that seems to be good for the base item usable. Let's take a look at the others. So usable item, let's start with the item healing. Now that might be a problem with Godot. If it's stuck like that, what you can do is close Godot and open it back up. All right, so I reopen Godot. Now there's no error anymore, so we're good. In here, there's nothing that will change, so I'll just add some comments. Set the healing amount, show the healing amount. The item is usable if the player is missing life points, and apply the healing. All right, let's see the upgrade one. So scripts, resource, usable item. Let's take a look at the item upgrade. Get can use, it's going to be is usable. And that's pretty much it. Get use text, show the effect. When we execute, we send a signal to upgrade an item in the player's inventory. And here we check if the item is still usable after a change in the player's inventories. So save that. All right. So now the item has been split correctly. I guess we can transfer all the components of the item. So items, here we have all the affix group and everything. The item info, this is gonna go in the UI. So I'll open my scene folder, UI, item info in UI. Then item info script, I'll put it in the script UI folder with the cooldown. Let's see if there's anything to fix in this one. The display function. One will display the hovered item info. Each component on the item also adds their own info. This inventory slot will become the inventory slot node that will create later, but we could set it right now. So this is going to be the next thing we split. It's going to be the inventory slot. We'll have the inventory slot itself, which will be the resource with the data and functions. And then we'll have the inventory slot node, which will be the visual, the one that we can click on. That's pretty much it. Then if we want to keep the same code after that, we can do var slot is equal to, this one is going to be the node, so slot node. And here we'll set it to slot node dot slot, because the slot node will have a resource, which will be the slot. So hope it's not too confusing, but yeah, let's keep going. And down here, the add line will add a line in the list. And the splitter is pretty much the same, add a splitter. So save that. This one will not be happy until we create that, but we'll create it soon enough. All right, so back in our items folder, I'll select all of them and I'll bring them into the resources item with the item resource. And then in the old items folder, we don't have anything in it, and the usable is empty, so we can delete this one. Delete. All right, so the item is done. So if we go in the inventory folder, we'll have the inventory slot and the inventory slot script. These two, we'll rename them for inventory slot node. So select this one, F2, inventory slot node, rename. So that's done. Now let's transfer those two in their folder. So the script will go in script, inventory, and then let's go back here, inventory slot node will go in scenes and inventory. All right, so now let's start modifying the script. So inventory slot node, this one, underscore node, extend texture wrap. Now in the scripts folder in resources, we'll add a new script, which is going to be inventory slot GD create. Now in this one, we can go in the inventory slot node, copy everything, bring it in the inventory slot, paste, and we'll change the texture rec for resource and remove the node. And that's where we'll do like we did with the item and clean both of those scripts. So let's start with the inventory slot. We'll remove the item container because this is only the data. The signal item change will stay. We have the item. The ready value here is not needed anymore. Groups is needed. For later, we'll need to know the index in its parent inventory. So when we save the data, we can recreate the link between the item in the hotbar and in the inventory. But yeah, we'll see about that later. It's going to be easier to understand. So index, then we can set the parent inventory. We'll add two values to know if we can split or we can drop the item from this slot. That's, for example, if you have a crafting slot or the hotbar slot. Then the ready function here, we don't need it, but instead we'll have a initialize function because now we have the index and the parent inventory. So when the inventory will be drawn, it will draw all of its slot inside and it will give it the index and itself. Then we have the set item. So this here sets the item in the slot. and it's used to force the item in it. Won't validate anything, and you have to use put item to do the validation. So here we'll change a bit this part. What I'll do is I'll add two functions. We'll have unset old item and set new item. So if we have a new item, we'll set the slot for this item to self, and we'll connect the signal depleted. And the unset is simply to remove the slot and disconnect the signal. So then in the set item, when we have our item is equal to the new item, before we'll unset the old item, and after we'll set the new item. And after that, we'll emit the signal item change. All right. Then if we continue, if we go to accept item, it will check if the item can go in the slot. This is pretty normal for the inventory, but for the equipment and the other slots, that can be changed. And then we have try put item. It will test if an item can be placed in the slot. And then we have the put item. We'll put a new item in the slot, returns the old item if it was swapped, return the new item if it was rejected, and returns null if it's accepted, but the slot was already empty. Has new item if there's an item in your hand, has both item if there's an item in your hand and in the slot, you'll swap them. And then can stack, check if an item can be stacked onto this slot. Then this function, remove item child, we don't need it. And then we have remove item, completely remove the item from the slot. Above here, remove item child, we can remove that. Add group, add an inventory group to the slot. Then we have the drop item, remove the item and send the drop signal. We have the sell item, remove the item but add gold coin. Here the last one, on item visibility change, will be removed. And instead we'll add the on item depleted that we added before. So here, on item depleted, bring that down. So I'll just rename this one. And here I'll call remove item. And this, remove the item if it gets to 0 quantity. There you go. So let's save that. Should be it for this script. Now if we go in the node, let's see what's going to change. First, the signal, we don't need it. This is for the item resource. The item container will keep it. The item ready groups don't need that. What we'll need here is a slot, slot. Then we'll have a setter, set slot. Then we'll have to define it. But what we'll do is we'll replace the ready for this. So here, set slot. When the slot resource is set, draw it and connect the signal. So when the inventory will loop through its slots to draw them, it will simply set the value here and it's going to be drawn correctly. So here we'll send the value, which is going to be the slot resource. Then the ready here is not needed. What we'll have instead is slot is equal to value. Then if we have a slot and the slot contains an item, then we'll do the stuff here. Now, if we want to get the item node, we'll have to add a new function in the resource manager. So here it's going to be, we'll get a new item node to show it visually, and we'll ask the resource manager get item node with the item resource. So we'll finish here and then we'll go and add this function. Then the item container will add the item node. This one we can remove. So now we connect the signals. It might happen that the signals are already connected. So if it's not already connected, is connected to mouse entered on the function in here, then we'll do the connection. And then we need to connect another signal because when the item is changed in the slot resource, we want to listen to it and update it visually. We'll have the slot item changed and we'll connect that on item changed. Now for the other functions, set item, accept item, everything here down to unvisibility changed can be deleted. There you go. When the slot is shown or hidden, cause a mouse exit signal so the item info hides. Perfect. Then we'll add the new on item change signal. When the item change, update the visual. For each children in the container, so anything in there, remove it. And then if there's an item in the slot, then just create the item, save that. Now we can go in the resource manager and add the get item node. The cooldown scene has been relocated. So let's fix the path. Inventory slot has been renamed. So node. And now we'll have to add item in here. So item node, inventory, item node, tscn, put that there. All right. So inventory slot node is fixed and the item node is here. All right, let's go down. So let's add some little comments. Get instance is used to get a prefab seed instance from its ID. get recipe, get the recipe from its ID, get placeholder, get the placeholder sprite for the equipment slot, and now get item node. Get the item node to be displayed in a slot. So we get the item resource. So here we'll just instantiate the item node scene that we created earlier. We'll set its item to this one that we're getting. We'll set the texture, and then we return this item node. So save that. That's it for the resource manager. All right, so now I think we could take a look at the inventory itself. So if I go in inventory, I'll change the name of the inventory scene and script. So I have two inventory node. Let's bring the script in the scripts inventory. Then the scene inventory node in scenes and inventory. All right, now if I open the script inventory node and then copy the content, and I'll create once again in resources, right click, create a script, inventory, and create. So if I open this one and I'll paste everything here, this one, class name inventory, will extend resource, and the inventory node will change the name, inventory node will extend inner panel. So let's come in the inventory script, resource. So here we have content change emitted when an item is added, remove, or has changed. Then the size of the inventory will have a signal for that, emitted if the size is changed. It's not really used for now, but it's there if you ever change the size of your inventory. Now here, the name, we can simply shorten that to just name. Here the slot container, delete that. I can remove this one, and those are all variables. I'll remove the isOpen value, set inventory size. If the size of the inventory change, add or remove slot. Now here, there's a little problem with that. If you change the size of the inventory, it's going to add more slot to it. So that was kind of a bug, but since I was not using it, we never saw the problem. This is a bit better. When the size of the inventory change, we'll check. If the size is greater than the new value, then that means that we need to remove some slots. So we'll go from the end and we'll remove them. So if you already have item in there, they're going to be deleted. What you could do is add a drop item just before, and maybe the item could be dropped. But for now, it's just going to void those items. Else, that means that we need to add new slot. So that's what it's going to do. For each missing slot, it's going to add a new one. It's going to set the groups, add this resource to the current slot that it has, and it will connect the signal for the item changed, and it will emit the signal that the size has changed. All right, so here, ready function, don't need that. Oh yeah, and groups, this one I'll add a setter function, set groups. So we'll create a function for that. I'll put it right there, set its own and the slots groups. We simply set the value, and then for each slots in here, we'll set their group to the same as the inventory. And then add item. Place an item in the first available stack or slot. Returns what remains if it can't place it. Then we have try place stack item, then accept items. Check to see if the inventory accept the given items. If they are accepted, they are removed. Returns the remaining items. So if the array is empty, that means that they have been all placed. Add group, we don't need that anymore because we have set groups. Then set upgradable items. Check if it contains upgradable items. All right, next is get item count with an ID. This will count the item that has a given ID. Remove item quantity. This will remove the quantity of the specified item ID. Returns the remaining quantity to remove. We'll remove the queue free here because that's not needed anymore. Since it's a resource, simply setting it to null is enough. All right, so next open, we can remove that. Close, we can remove that. Then content has changed. Check for upgradable item and emit the content change signal. Get data, pack the inventory data in a dictionary for saving, and then the set data will populate an inventory from a dictionary. And the last one is when an item from a slot change, the content has changed. Well, obvious. So that's pretty much it for the inventory resource. Now let's do the inventory node. So in here, no signals. The export will only keep slot container. The variables will keep is open, and then we'll have the slots node contained in this one, and we'll have the inventory resource. All the rest we can pretty much delete there. Set inventory we'll get a value that we'll set to the inventory. Then if we have one, if it's not an error, then we'll draw each slots and we'll set the title of this inventory. Then the draw slots instantiate each visual slots. So for each of the slots in the inventory resource, we'll get an instance for the slot node. We'll add the slot to the tree, add child, and then we'll set its slot resource to this one. Now that this is done, let's take a look at the other scripts. So if we go in inventory, equipment slot, we'll change the name for equipment slot node, and we'll send this in scene and inventory. Then let's find the other one, equipment slot GD. This one was in UI, so it wasn't at the right place. Anyway, so let's change the name, node, equipment slot node. This will go in script, inventory. So now we can go in the resources and create a script here. New script, equipment slot. And then we can open this one. Let's open the old one too. So script, inventory, equipment slot. Let's copy everything. Equipment slot, the resource, paste that here. And this one will extend inventory slot. So this is correct. And the class name is equipment slot. So this here, we don't need the placeholder. The ready is not needed. We'll have a initialize function. This will set the type of the equipment that is accepted. Then we have accept item. The type of the item must be the same as the type of the slot. Then try put item. It's the same as the parent inventory slot. Then the put item. If it's not the correct type, return the new item. The last one is get stat. This will get the total of the given stat from the item in the slot. Now put item will change it a little bit. The second part here will remove it because the placeholder will only be needed in the UI. Remove that. So save that and let's go in equipment slot node. And here change the class name to slot node and it will extend inventory slot node. So in here, we can basically remove everything except the placeholder. We will have two little functions. We will overwrite the function from the inventory slot. So the set slot does as the parent function and set the placeholder. So we'll call the parent set slot and then show the texture of the placeholder. And on item changed, this is simply to show or hide the placeholder. So let's save that. Let's go to the next one in inventory. Now we can do the equipment panel. So rename that to node. All right, those are renamed. Equipment node will go in script inventory. Equipment node TSCN will go in the scene inventory. If I click on resource, I'll add a new script. Equipment GD, create that. Let's open it. And then let's open the equipment node inventory, equipment node. This time I'm not going to copy everything. Let's just see what is different. So here I'll add a class name, equipment node, and it will extend inventory node. In this one, we don't need the set inventory size and get stat since this is the UI only. So those inventory slot will be changed for equipment slot. Then the ready function instead will use the draw slots. So when the inventory node, the script of the inventory node calls the draw slot, if it's a type equipment node, it will call this one. And this will not really draw the slots because they will already be in the panel. So we'll simply set the value. So the head equipment slot, head.slot is equal to the inventory.slots 0. It's going to be the first one. Then let's do the same for the others. All right, like that. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And here, since this is the UI, we'll add them to the slots node. And the signal inventory ready is not needed anymore. So remove that one and save. Let's go to the equipment script. So this one will do the class name. Class name is equipment. And then we'll extend the inventory script, which is a resource. And then we'll need a initialize function. So when we create a new equipment inventory, we'll add 4 slots, which is going to be the 4 equipment type, head, chest, offhand, and main hand. This will set the slots and attach signals. This will add the 4 basic equipment type to the equipment. And yeah, here when you create an equipment slot, it's going to be the index, the inventory itself, and the type of equipment of this slot. And then at the end, we'll connect the signal, item changed. So the script here is going to be the one in the inventory. So if we go into inventory, on item change, we'll call content change and all of these other scripts. So that's good. And then we'll need the getStat. Get the total of the given stat from all equipped items. Save that. Now Godot doesn't like this script because I think I've modified a lot of class name, but we'll just continue and we might have to restart it. So let's see what's going to be the next script if we go in inventory. So here we have the hotbar slot. So rename to add the little node and then move. So I'll move that in script inventory. Go back in inventory, hotbar slot node, in scene, inventory. Then in script resources, I'll add a new script, hotbar slot. Create that, let's open it. Then let's open the other one, the hotbar slot node. Now this one will change a lot and it's going to be a lot more simple. We were copying the texture of the item and connecting a bunch of signal to be sure to listen when the item is depleted or it's in cooldown or something like that. Now, since the item is a resource, we can simply use it, read the data in the resource to set the item here. So let's delete everything except the label key. Then here we will need to overwrite the set slot from the inventory slot. We'll call the parent and then we'll set key. Let's create this function. Set the key to be pressed to activate this slot. So now it's simply the number 125 and it's going to show it in the label. If you press this slot's key, activate the item if possible. So pretty simple. If we press the key and there's an item in there and this item has the usable component, then we'll print a message to know that it has been activated, then we'll use the item. So that's it for the hotbar slot node, except that I need to add here node and inventory slot node. Save that. Then let's go in the hotbar slot resource class name. Hotbar slot will extend inventory slot. And then here we'll need one variable, the key that you want to press on this slot to activate it. Then we'll need a initialize function. Oh yeah, and when you have an initialize function, if you add a dot after it and parentheses, that will call the parent. So here I use the the index of the slot, just to know which key you need to press. So if it's the first slot, it's going to be index 0, so I'll add 1, so press key 1. Then the inventory name, I don't use it here, but I'll pass those values to the parent, because the inventory slot will use those. And then here I'll set the value can drop and can split to false, because you cannot drop item from the hotbar, and you cannot split them, because they are only a copy of the original item. And then we'll override a few functions. The try_put item doesn't look if the item is stackable. And then we'll need the to set new item and unset old item, because we don't want to set the hotbar slot on the item. Because if we go in the inventory slot, here, unset old item and set new item, we do set the slot and unset it. We don't want to say that the item is in the hotbar slot if it's in the player slot too, if that makes sense. All right, then here we'll override two other functions. So we'll override the put item. This will always return the item we want to place in the slot. So we will put the new item and then we'll also return it. So instead of doing all the copying the texture and connecting a bunch of signals, now we simply put the item in the slot. Since it's a resource, so it's no problem. And then we'll return it. So you'll still have it in your hand. And then we will override the can stack and we'll simply return false. Cannot stack item in this type of slot. So that's it. Save that. All right, so let's go back in the inventory folder. Sprites we could delete. All right, so inventory container. This one will simply move it in the script UI. And then the other one, TSCN, will go in scene UI. And then you might get a warning, but yeah, just click OK. Should be good. All right, then if I open the inventory container, in here, I'll just change a few things. I'm not really opening multiple inventories anymore, so I'll do current inventory, singular, and this is going to be just one. And then the close function, remove the inventory node when closed. Instead of looking at all inventories and closing them, I'll just go in the container, get children for c.query. And then the current inventory will be equal to null. And then you can hide. And then we have the onInventory opened. When an inventory is opened, display it in the panel. We don't have the open function anymore. We can remove this. Then if the current inventory is equal to the inventory, then we don't need to do anything. Now here we'll need the inventory node, the visual inventory. So var node is equal to ReourceManager, get instance, and here we'll just say inventory node. And then the inventory container will add child the node. We'll need to set the node.inventory equal to the inventory that we're getting here. And then the current inventory will be equal to the inventory. And then we'll show on inventory closed, we'll simply do close. There you go. Let's save that. Let's go to the next one. Let's go back in the inventory folder. Now it's going to be the inventory player. So I'll move those two in the UI folder. So script UI, then back in inventory, inventory player tscn, scene UI. Couldn't save scene, likely. Okay, so let's go in the UI folder, inventory player. I'll change a few things. Instead of having the 3 equipment here, we'll add them in the player data. So here, instead, we'll simply have a list of inventories. So a inventory container. So inventory container, and this is going to be a control. And in the player data, we'll get the equipment and other inventory if you have more, like the left or right pockets. So the onUpgrade item, we don't need this. Unchanged data, we don't need this. And on saving game, we don't need this. So the ready function will draw the player's inventories from the player's data. So all of these we can delete. And instead, we'll have var equipment panel is going to be equal to the ReourceManager.getInstance. And here we'll get the equipment node. Then after that, what we need to do is add this panel to the inventory container. So inventory container add child, and we'll add the equipment panel. Since this is only the visual, it doesn't have the data, we need to set its inventory. So equipment panel dot inventory is the equipment. So it's going to be in the player data and it's going to be equipment. It's not there right now, but we'll add it later. Let's just add the left pocket and right pocket. So inventory left panel, we'll create an inventory node, then we'll add it, and then just set its inventory. Inventory left, inventory right, from the player data. All right, let's save that. When we're done with the script, we'll go in the UI to change a few things. So if we go back in the inventory folder, we have split stack. So I can bring this one in scene UI and try to find where is the script. So split stack GD was in the UI here. Let's bring it, script UI. Let's open it. So in this one, there's nothing that will change. So I'll just add a few comments like that. Now it's a bit more descriptive. All right, I'll save that. And the inventory folder is empty now. So I can delete this one. And then if I go in my Interactables folder here, I'll just move them in their new folder. So if I select all the scripts, move them to the scripts, Interactables. Then if I select all the scenes, I'll move them to scene, Interactables. So this one, I can delete it. Then if I go in my Interactable folder, crafting table, nothing will change here, but I have some little comments. Then the floor item, interact, try to pick up the item, remove it if possible. And in here, the remove hidden node, this is not needed anymore. Since the item is now a resource, then it doesn't need to be freed or hidden with the little hack that we had before. So that's good. So here, the add hidden node, we can remove that too. All right, so let's see the interactable chest. So this one will change a bit because now that the inventory is a resource, we can use this to set the size and the inventory name instead. So I'll remove the inventory name and size. I'll rename the items for loot table because in the first chest, it might be exactly what it's going to be inside, but like the random chest and the treasure chests, it's going to pick in there. So it's going to be more like a loot table. The item that will be picked randomly. So that's good. Inventory data, the action shown in the interactable text, the name of the object shown in the interactable text, then the ready function, the inventory here, remove, the object name will be equal to the inventory dot name. The inventory size we can remove, the inventory name, remove, set item will keep, and the add hidden node, we don't need that anymore. Perfect. So then set items, generate the items in the chest. So for I in loot table, we'll generate the items. And for the interact, send the signal to show the content of the chest out of range, will close when we're too far. Perfect. So that seems to be good. Save that. Then the interactable labels we can skip because it's exactly the same. So we'll go in random chest. Set items, randomly pick an item from the loot table and roll for rarity and stats. So here, items is now loot table. Let's save that. Now Godot is still not happy, but yeah, that might be just a problem because I modified a lot of class name. If I go in my chest, I do have my loot table, so I think I'm good. Now we can go in treasure chest. For each slots, get a new item and roll its rarity. Then here we were freeing the item before because they were nodes. Now there aren't resources. We don't have to. Remove that and remove that. So we can just remove the items. And then we generate a new one and we open it. So the rest is okay. Save. All right, now let's go in the data folder and then we'll take a look at game data. I'll just add a few comments and then let's go in player data. We'll add a few things. A new variable for the equipment, the inventory, left and right, and then the hotbar, because those will be saved. Then here I'll have a initialize function, and this function will be used to initialize a player's inventory. So all of those will set the starting value from here. So the equipment will be equal to equipment.new, and then we'll duplicate. Because if you don't duplicate, it will always load the same script and share the same data. So by doing duplicate, this is going to be a unique equipment inventory. Then we'll set its property. So equipment.name is going to be equal to equipment. If you don't ever change the name of the equipment inventory, it could be set in its initialize function in the equipment. Then equipment.groups is going to be equal to player, and I'll have equipment. So that's it for the equipment. Now if I want to do the inventory left, is going to be equal to a new inventory dot duplicate. Then I'll do the name, so inventory left dot name is going to be equal to left pocket. Inventory left size is going to be set to 5. So there's going to be 5 inventory slot in here. I'll set the groups. Let's just copy this one, change that to inventory left, and it's going to be player and crafting. So that's it for inventory left. Let's copy this and paste it for inventory right. So yeah, if you don't have the duplicate function here, then the two inventory would be the same. If you would place an item in one, it would appear in the second one too. And then the last one is going to be the hotbar. So hotbar is equal to hotbar.new.duplicate. And this one will only get a size. Hotbar.size is equal to 5. All right, so that's it for the initialize function. So set the data from a dictionary. So here we'll add a function. So when you load the game, we'll set all the data in the inventories. So I'll just add this here, change the data. I'll add it at the bottom. So if I make some place, change data. So that will take the value from the inventories and set it in the equipment and the inventory left. It will call the function to set the data. So that's pretty much it. And then in the get data, so here we'll set the inventories dictionary. So we'll set the value for each of them. We'll get the data from the inventories resources. All right, so that should be good for the player data. Let's see the settings data. I'll just add the usual comments here. And now we can go to the next one. Now let's take a look at the managers. In here, let's take all of them and bring all of them in manager in the new folder. And then we can delete the managers folder here. Delete. So let's take a look at those. The game enum will not change. The inventory manager will change a bit. So let's take a look at that. So in here, inventory manager, the hidden nodes. This was added to fix the orphan nodes. So remove this. Here in the variables, we'll have a new one. The player data that will export. The inventory groups will keep. The inventories will remove that. The item in hand will remove that. The item offset will keep, and the shop open will keep. So here in the ready function, we'll have to add the inventories of the player from the player data in the groups. So the inventory groups here, we'll do add inventory to group, then player data dot equipment, and the other ones, inventory left and inventory right. Then the signal inventory ready, we don't need that anymore. The stack splitted and GUI input are still needed. We'll connect the signal for the upgrade item. So signal manager, connect upgrade item on self, on upgrade item. And now in the input function, we removed item in hand because we will move it in the item in hand node. So item in hand node dot item. So if there's an item in your hand, so that's how we'll have it now. So then set hand position, set the position of the dragged item, and then here the scale, the item in hand node will deal with it itself. So we can remove it here and just here above too. And then we have the set item void filter, set the control that will catch if you drop an item. The item in hand is now a node with an item, and now it has space for items. Return if there's enough space for items in a inventory group. All right, so then add items, add multiple items to an inventory group, add inventory to group, add an inventory to a group, or create a new group. The group ID, we don't need this anymore because we'll just pass the inventory and we'll get the group from the inventory. And we'll connect a signal also. So when the content of the inventory changes, we'll listen to it from here. And yeah, we'll change the name of the function to just add inventory, since we're not adding it to a group, but we're adding an inventory to the inventory manager. So I can rename the one above too in the ready function. And let's go back down, add inventory. Here we'll check each group of the inventory for g in inventory.group. If not, inventory group has the g. And then at the bottom here, inventory add group will remove that. And here we can indent once more, and group ID will be G. We'll add the inventory to this inventory groups. Perfect. Then the next function is get inventories from group, gets the inventory in a group, example crafting. Pretty simple. And the next one, get upgradable items, get the items in the group that can be upgraded. All right, so if we continue, has upgradable item, return if the inventory group contains upgradable item. Then has items, return if the items data are present in the inventory group. I think this one is used mostly for the crafting. And the next one, get item count, return the quantity of item ID contained in the inventory group. So if you want to know how many of one item you have, and then remove items, remove the items from the inventory group. Now I forgot to do the resource script for the hotbar, so I'll go after that to do it. But here I have a function for the hotbar. Get inventory by name. This will return the inventory from its name, because the hotbar, when you have an item and click in the slot, the item is the same. So when you save, you need to know where is the original item. So this is going to be used for saving the hotbar. For now, it's pretty basic. I'll just check if it's equipment, left pocket or right pocket, but it could be improved. But for now, it does the job. So then add hidden node and remove hidden node. Those, we don't need them anymore. Unstack splitted. This one will change a bit. Here we have the item in hand is equal new item. Remove that. Item in hand node, add child. Instead, we'll do item is equal to new item. And there you go. That's it. The next one, on inventory ready, we will remove this one. Then the unvoid GUI input. When an item is clicked in the void, drop it. Then here, item in hand node, remove child, remove this line. And here we'll emit the signal, item drop, item in hand node.item. This, we can copy that and put it there. Item in hand node.item is null. And then we set the void filter. The rest is okay. Next function is on mouse entered slot. Show item info when mouse over. Just change the slot here to slot node, just to know that this will be a node and not the slot resource. This here, it's slot node dot slot dot item. All right, and then on mouse exited slot, hide the item info. Just that. The next one, on GUI input slot. This will detect and process the different clicks on an inventory slot node. Shift right click will split the stack, left click will pick up or place item, and right click will open the action menu. Now here the slot that we're getting is a slot node. So the inventory slot node. And if we don't want to have to change it everywhere in here, we can do var slot is equal to slot node dot slot. Now here, everywhere it's item in hand, we'll have node dot item, and I will extract the split code here. So I'll cut everything. I'll have a function split, and I'll pass the slot node. So I'll go before the signal connections, And I'll create a function, split, which will receive a slot node and paste the code. Let's just add slot node before the slot and item, and unstack splitted, I'll send the slot node, and the split stack display, I'll send the slot node. And in the split stack, I forgot to change one thing. So if I go in my UI, split stack, the slot I'm gonna receive here is gonna be a node. So slot node. So I'll need to add it here before. Slot node dot slot. All right, so let's go back in the inventory manager, split the item stack in the slot. All right, let's go back down. So this is when we click button left. When we want to pick an item, the variable had empty hands will be item in hand node dot item is equal to null. Item in hand node dot item is equal to the slot dot put item, and the item that we'll put is the item in hand node dot item. Then this part we can delete. If item in hand node dot item, if had empty hands, then we'll get the item offset. This one we can remove. We can just combine the two if and had empty hands. Boop. There you go. Simplifying a bit. Set hand position will stay. This here item menu will be slot node. The last thing is if slot.item, then slot node will emit signal mouse entered, and slot node will emit signal mouse exited. All right. So then on inventory content change, emit a signal when the content of an inventory has changed. Example, enable the craft button if the crafting inventories has the required items, and also if the player has enough space. Then earlier we removed the function to upgrade the item on the player inventory. So we'll add it here. Upgrade an item on the player. So normal, magic to rare. So on upgrade item, we'll get an upgradable item from the inventories that has the group player. We'll shuffle and generate an item, and then we'll emit the signal that the item has changed, because if it's rare, then it cannot be upgraded anymore. So that's pretty much it for the inventory manager. There's still the item in hand node that we'll have to fix. But before, let's go and do the hotbar that I forgot. So scripts, resources, let's add a new script, hotbar.gd, and create. Let's open this one. We'll extend resource. Then we'll set the class name to hotbar. Oh yeah, and I thought I forgot to do the hotbar script, but that is because my hotbar was in the UI folder. But yeah, let's do it. And this is not going to extend resource, it's going to extend inventory, because now we're going to override some functions. So if I go in inventory and I go at the top, here I have the set inventory size. I'll copy the function and bring that in the hotbar, paste that. I need to bring it here because I need to change the inventory slot to hotbar slot. Then yeah, that's the only thing. I guess the other way to do it, I could have a function get new slots or something like that. And in here I could simply return this code. I would pass in the variable s. So here I would get new slot like that. Then I would only need to override this. I guess that would be better. Yeah, so if I try that, let's pick this function and instead remove this one. Then I'll go in inventory. I'll add this little function, copy it, put it there. So this one, I'll cut it and put it here. So that means that if an inventory is created, the set inventory size will be called. And when it will get to this function, get new slot, it will call this one and it will return an inventory slot. Except that if it's a hotbar, it should call this one and return a hotbar slot. So that should be better. Now the next function is for saving the hotbar, so the get data. So what it's going to do, it's going to pack the data of the referenced item, so the linked is preserved on load. If the original item is lost, save the item itself. So then, function get data, this will return a dictionary. It will start with the empty dictionary, and then for each slot, in slots.size, so for each index, if the current slot at that index has an item, then we'll check the slot of the item where it is right now. So var slot is equal to the item that we're looking at right now. So dot item will get its slot where it is. So then we'll check if there's a slot. So if the item is in your hand or it's on the ground, it's not going to be valid. Then end the slot group find player is greater than -1. So if the current slot is on the player. Then, if it's the case, we'll save it. So data at this position will be equal to a dictionary where we have is reference. So this one is a reference, so true. Then inventory name. This is going to be the slot.inventory.name. This is basically inventories that are saved also, because if I would put the item in a chest in my scene right now, since those chests are not saved, then I cannot load the item from it. But in your game, if you have a chest in your town or something that the player can store item, then you could use it here. So then slot index is going to be slot.index. So that is if we have the item in the player inventory. Else, we'll just save the item itself. So the data at that position will be equal to a dictionary. Then here is reference, is false, item is equal to the item in this slot. So item, then we'll do get data, return data. There you go. Then we need to do the function to load the data, set the data of each slot from the dictionary. So function set data, which is a dictionary, and this will return void for s in slots size. We'll do slots at that position dot put item null. So we'll remove anything that is in here, and then if data has that position, then we'll get the item. Var item. If it's a reference, we want to get the reference of the item. So when you use the item in your hotbar, it will use the item in your inventory. And if it's not the reference, we'll just build the item. So if this item in the data is a reference, var inventory is equal to InventoryManager. Now this is where we use the function from earlier, get inventory by name, then data s dot inventory name, and then the item is going to be equal to this inventory slot at the index that we saved. Data s, this is the index, then slot index. Well, yeah, this is the data that we save here, slot index, and then dot item, because that's the slot in the inventory. So we're getting this item, so it's going to be the same reference. Else, we just build the item. So the item will be equal to the ReourceManager, and then we'll call the function get item from data, and then we'll pass in the data dot item, and at the end we'll add the item that we got in the slot. So slots s put item, the item, and there you go. So now the hotbar will be saved. Let's save that. All right, so now that this is done, I'm gonna go and do the Hotbar Node this time. So those two scripts, we'll rename them to Hotbar Node. The script will go in script inventory, and the Hotbar Node TSCN will go in scene inventory. Okay, then let's go in script inventory Hotbar Node GD. Let's change a few things here. Node, it will still extend the scale control. Instead of exporting the size, we'll export a resource, which will be the player data. Then we'll have the slots. Instead of looking for the size and placing the slots, we'll instead, for each slot in the player data, .hotbar.slots. Then here we'll get an instance of a slot node, which will be hotbar slot node, like that. And here we don't need to tell it which key it's going to use because it's going to use the index. So we can remove that. Slot container, add child slot node. Here I'll add slot node dot slot is equal to the slot of the hotbar itself, because this hotbar here in the player data is the resource, and it contains the hotbar slots resource for each slot. So we'll put it in the visual node. Yeah, hope it makes sense. Draw the hotbar slots from the player data. So let's save that. And now let's see in UI, we'll start transferring all of those to where they go and look at if they need to be fixed. So crafting list, in this one, display the list of recipes. When close, set the shop open to false, so you cannot sell items. When open, display the UI, and if it's a shop, allow selling. And the last one, when out of range, close the window. Now I'm gonna move crafting list in the script, UI, crafting list TSCN, in scene, UI. Okay, so back here we have crafting option, set the price and produce list. Activate the craft button if the crafting inventories have the needed items, and the player inventories has enough space for the produced item. And on craft press, when crafting, remove the price items and add the produce. And the last one, check to see if it's possible to craft after a change in the player or crafting inventory. That's it. So let's move them. Script UI, crafting option TSCN, scene UI. Back in here, draggable control. Let's open it. The input. If the mouse is moving and currently dragging, move the control. Set scale, change the scale, but keep the control in the screen. So set the position of the control, but we'll keep it in the screen. If left-clicking the control, start dragging. If the size change, make sure it's still in the screen. So yeah, I'll save this one and I'll move it in script UI. Back here, inner panel, set the title of the panel. So yeah, we can just move it. Inner panel GD, script UI. Inner panel TSCN, scene UI. Item action menu. This one will change a few things because now we're simply executing some functions, but I'd like to have the ability to pass in arguments to those functions. So I'll have a variable here, actions are, which will be another array, and then display the menu for the selected item. So here I initialize the action array. I'll do the same for the action arguments. We'll only show the drop action if the slot node, oh yeah, and this will be a node. So slot node dot slot can drop. So we'll only show the drop action if the slot can drop the item. So if slot allow dropping, we'll drop it. Then I'd like to add a new function here, the split function. So I'll just bring the little code for that. So if it's possible to split, so we'll check if the slot can split, and if the item in the slot has more than one quantity, we'll show the action split. And then the function that we created in the InventoryManager, split, that's the one we're going to call. And here we'll add the arguments, which will be this slot. So we'll change add action a bit later to add the arguments also. Then this little part, get the actions on the components. And then here is shop open, able to sell items if the shop is open. Oh yeah, and since I changed the name, slot node, I need to change them here. So this one is going to be slot node dot slot. Then the get action of the components will have the same, slot node dot slot, this one too. And on the sell item, slot node. All right. And then at the end, we'll check if there is action available, then we'll do the pop-up. If there's nothing you can do, we'll just not show it. So if actions size is greater than 0, then do that. Let's make some place. So add action, add an action to the list. An action has a name, functions, and optional arguments. So here we'll add the optional arguments. Args is equal to an empty array. So if you don't pass anything, it's just going to be an empty array. So here we add the action, then we'll add the arguments. So action args.append args. Then we'll add the new action in the menu. Activate the clicked action. And here we'll call func, but we'll call func v. So the difference is with just call func, you need to specify each arguments that you have. If you add v, then you give the arguments with a single array. We'll do action args and the ID. So there you go. We can save that. And now we can move the script in script UI. I'll close the resource. If I go back in UI, item action menu, scene UI. So now item quantity, set the needed item and quantity for crafting. So then I'll move this one, script UI, and the item quantity to scene UI. All right, now item stat line. In this one, nothing will change, so I can simply drag it to script and UI, and then player stat window. Yeah, in this one, we'll change a few things. So here we'll change how we connect the signal to know when an item change. So I can basically just remove everything here and player data dot equipment dot connect, and we'll connect the content changed on self on content changed. And then we'll rename this instead of on item change to on content change. At ready, we'll just call it right away on content changed. And then we'll pass the groups of the equipment. So player data dot equipment dot groups. And here we'll get the groups when we get that signal. And we'll check in those groups if I find the equipment group. If I do, then I'll update the stats. So update the stats when the items in the equipment group changes. Let's save that. So player stat window, script UI, then player stat window TSCN, scene UI. Okay, all right, scale control sets the scale of this control, set the scale when it changes. When the size change, update the pivot point so it always scale from the center. All right, that's good. Save that. Let's move it. Scale control, script UI. Back in UI, settings, when you click it, update the scale of the UI using the scale control, change the full screen toggle, update the inputs when the data changes. So when you load your game, it will set the value here. And that's it. So let's save that. Let's move it. Setting script UI and TSCN in scene UI. Okay, back in UI, splitter. This one is for the item info. So I'll just move this one in scene UI, nothing else. UI container. Yeah, nothing changed in this one. So move it to script UI. And the last one, window. So yeah, nothing will change in this one either. So let's drag this one, script UI, and the last one, window in scene UI. All right, so that's done. So let's delete this one, remove. So now if I look in the main folder, the scene folder is the scene for the game. So I'll leave this here. And those other things are the assets for the game. So that would be your own folder structure. And also that means that if you want to import the inventory system as is in your game, you can simply import the inventory system folder and you could start connecting stuff. So now we'll have to fix the visual part because the inventory player will change. So if we go in the scenes UI and find inventory player, let's see the 2D. Now in here, we won't have the panel already there. So here I can delete all of these, node, equipment, left and right. Then if I click it, I need to set its inventory container. So click that, inventory container. The player data right now is the rich player. So I'll go back in data, resource, and I'll put the default one, player data. What you could do also is if you don't want to go everywhere and set it manually, you could go in the script and in the ready function, just check if the player data is set. If it's not, you could have a function in the resource manager, let's say, to get it. Now, if we go in the equipment panel, inventory, equipment node, and this one. But yeah, Godot is not happy because I changed a lot of class name and stuff like that and move files around. So here the equipment node is not showing me the export variable because there's a problem inside. So I'll save everything, scene, save all scenes, and then I'll reboot Godot. All right, so now if I go in my inventory system, scenes, inventory, equipment node, then oh yeah, to fix a problem, here I have to add the node to each of those equipment slot node. So that's the correct class. Save that. Now if I go in the scene, click my equipment, now I have my nodes here. Now let's take a look at the managers and inventory manager TSCN. This one, we have the item in hand that we need to change. So right now, item in hand is a scale control. If I click the script, it's only using the scale control script, but we'll create a new script for this. So I'll remove the script, add another one, item in hand, let's create. Then this will extend scale control. Then we'll have a variable item, which is a type item, and we'll have a setter function. So set get, set item. Then this will set the dragged item. So then we'll create the function func set item with a value. The value will be the item we want to set. So item is equal to value. Then for each children in get children, normally you should only have one, but just in case there's something else in there, we'll remove everything. So c.qfree. And then if we have an item, then we'll add it. So add child resource manager dot get item node, and this is going to be the item. There you go. So save that. If we go back in the item manager, if we click on the main one, all right, so we have a problem in the script because we don't have access to the exported variables. Let's go in. Item in hand is not declared. So item in hand node, forgot that one in the input. Forget this one in the set hand position. Node. Then we have a group ID a little bit lower. This is going to be G. If we go back in the scene, okay, now we have our nodes and we can set the player data. So resources in the data, player data, and drag this in here. All right, save this. Now there's the hotbar. So scene, inventory, and hotbar node, TSCN. This one has the player data too. So if I click my hotbar, I need to give it the player data. So the same one, player data, and give it. All right, so at that point, I'm not sure what is left to do. So what I usually do is just start the game and see what error pops up. So start the game, F5. And yeah, all of the paths need to be fixed. So the usable items, those are going to be in resources, usable items, and this is the healing item. I'll just remove this one and drag this. There, those are correct. Then if we go just a bit lower, the item ID here has a problem because this ID here is simply ID. Let's start again. All right, in the resource manager, is that it? Yeah, resource manager. All the paths here are also broken, so let's fix those. And now the hotbar, inventory, and stuff like that will have the underscore node to them. All right, so I fixed those. So now let's test, start the game. This is the setting manager that is trying to load the settings data. So let's fix this path. All right, let's see what's next. F5. Here in the item action menu, I forgot to change the slot node here. So slot node, okay. Next one, F5. Oh, I made a typo. So this dictionary, so dictionary, that's a bit better. Let's continue. Then we have the save manager that needs its game data, and bring it there. Good. Next one, please. F5. Now here, floor item is trying to get the item name, but we changed it for just name. All right, so next one. Oh yeah, this problem is because now we're using an inventory resource, but here I forgot that this inventory needs to be exported. So export a resource, which is an inventory. But yeah, we cannot tell it is an inventory because Godot doesn't like that. So now let's go in the dungeon. So I'll go in main, the dungeon here, open the scene. If I look at that, I can click my chest here. And now the inventory is available. So I'll add a new inventory, find it in new inventory. If I click the resource, now I can give it a name. So random chest, the size will be 5. And then the loot table here, I can give it some stuff. So gold coin, crystal, and wood. So that's good. And now for this one, I'll add another array. So there you go. I have a chest plate, a wooden sword, gold coin, and rock. And then I need to set an inventory here. New inventory. Give it a name. Just chest. Give it 10 size. And then if I go to the last chest, this one, inventory, new inventory. I'll set this one to treasure chest with a size of 5. And let's give it a nice little loot table. All right, so I added a bunch of equipment in here. And that should be good. So now if we try to start the game, F5. Okay, so now we're trying to get an equipment node, but we don't have that in our scenes here. So I'll add this one. All right, so equipment node, and I have the path. There might be some others that are missing, so we'll see. Oh, and in the inventory player, I think I forgot to set the inventory container because it's null right now. So if I go in the UI, inventory player, 2D, so like this one. Okay, yeah. So here the inventory container is set. So I guess it's in the main scene. If I look at the inventory player, this one is unset. So I'll just click the little arrow next to it, and there you go. Sometimes this happens when you modify the scene and it is used elsewhere. Sometimes the link is not set because if you would have set something else, maybe you don't want it to be overridden. So that might be why. Next error, please. Start. Oh yeah, so the placeholder has been changed to the resource manager. So the equipment slot is trying to get it. So resource manager and start. Now it's the player stat window. Oh, I forgot to give it the player data. So scenes UI, player stat window TSCN. If I select the first one, player data is there. All right, so I guess that must be in the main scene. Player stats. Never mind, it's just a little typo here. Equipment, and now if we try that, now we are in the game. Can I move around? Yes. Can I pick items? No. So let's see what I forgot here. The item name. So it's going to be item.name. All right. Next one, pick the helmet. And I'm trying to queue free the old item. This is not needed anymore. So that means that here we can remove the temporary value that we have. And there. Let's see what's next. F5, get the item. So in the item node, I forgot to set the label quantity. So let's open inventory, item node, TSCN, select my item, and label quantity, assign quantity. And let's start. And now let's pick up the helmet, and it works until I mouse over it. So here it's in the item info. It's trying to get the size of the slot, but the slot is now a resource. So I need to do slot node, and here slot node. And at the bottom there, slot node also. All right, let's see if that works. Start the game, and let's pick up the helmet and mouse over it. Yes. Now, can I right click it? Yeah, I can drop and use. Let's try to use. The cooldown is starting. All right. And if I try to pick it up here, slot node. All right, let's start again. Let's pick the helmet, try to pick it up, and I can pick it up. All right. So can I put it in the hotbar? Yes. And then if I use it, use. the cooldown starts on all of them. And if I try to press the key 2, it works. If I try to press the key 4, it doesn't work now. But if I wait and press it, all right. If I right click and use, doesn't happen. All right, everything seems to be good. And yeah, if I use it and drop it on the ground, the cooldown still goes. So now if I pick other stuff, oh, now I glitched. Let's see what's happening. All right, so it crashed in the interactable chest because when I'm out of range, it's trying to see if the inventory is open, but we removed that one. So we'll just remove that. There you go. Save this, start again. All right, so can we open a chest? Yeah, if I move away, good. If I pick up some items, everything seems to be working well. Swapping items. Let's go take a look at the treasure chest. And if I open it, I get a crash. Because here, item name. I guess I could do a little search. Item name. Yes, I have a bunch of them. So let's remove this one. Next, item name. And that should be it. Yeah, that's okay. So let's start the game. And let's see the treasure chest. All right, so opening it, everything is there. And we have some magic item. And if I press E again to open it again, I get a crash because it's trying to add child. So yeah, I think I forgot to go through the item manager. So let's remove this line and I'll go to the top and I'll add some comments and I'll stop the game. I was here, generate random rarity, randomly select a rarity for the item. Then we have generate rarity, randomly selects affixes and stats for the item based on its rarity. Then random affix group, randomly selects affixes for the item based on its rarity and level. Then we go to the get valid affix group, get the possible affixes on the item based on the level and its equipment type. Then we have set rare name, set a random name for rare items. Then we have roll unique, roll the weight for the unique stats. Set unique, sets the unique data on the item. Get usable, get the usable script for the item and sets its data. And then set usable, set the usable script on an existing item with the given data. That's mostly when you're loading your game or you apply the usable on a unique item. And the last one, get type names, get the name of an item type to display. All right, let's start that. And then if I go back in my treasure chest, let's open it until I get my unique item, Crystal Orb of Gortic, and this one has the usable. So this time it seems to be working. So can I equip it? Can I use it? Use, yes. Let's take a look at the split now that I'm going faster. So if I open a chest, I can pick this item, I can drop it, and oh yeah, this one doesn't need to change name because item, this one needs to stay there because item name is like that in the dictionary. Oops, let's try again. Then if I open my chest, I guess I can split this one. Oh, or not. Unstack splitted. This is the slot node. So I should add slot node dot slot quantity. Then this slot node dot, and this one is the slot node. So just replace it, and there you go. So start again. Let's go into chest, split the stack, split. All right, split it again. If I try to put that in my hotbar, now the item are linked, and if I split this one, split a few quantities, then it's linked so it has the same quantity. So if I stack something on it, the quantity changes. But if I stack this one on something else and it gets destroyed, it will be gone. But if I take it and stack it on this one, it's okay, I still have some remaining. But if I stack it on this one, nothing is remaining, it's depleted, so it gets removed from here. Now if I put something down here, I cannot stack it. So if I try to put those 5 crystal there, they will just swap. And on the hotbar, I cannot right click this one because there's nothing I can do on it. But if I would pick a potion, or let's say the helmet, then I can put the helmet there and try to use it. So right click, use, that works. But if the helmet is on the ground, then I try to use it, it's not gonna work because it's not on the player. All right, let's see if those crafting table works. No. So here, item quantity, I'm receiving an item, but it needs to be a node. So here inside of the item, I will ask the resource manager to get an item node. That should work. Let's start again. So if I open a shop, all right, I see everything. If I try to craft, then I forgot here to remove this temporary item too. So let's just start again. Open one crafting table and try to craft stones, and now it works. Let's try to see if I fill my inventory. The stone brick craft button disappeared because there is no more space in my inventory, but the first one is still available because I still have place in the stacks. If I make some place and try to craft, now it works. All right, so here, the remove item in the inventory slot, I still have the queue free. So here I'll remove and just leave put item null. So let's start. So let's come here and let's do the same thing. I'll fill my inventory and then I'll try to craft a bunch of bricks, and seems to work. All right, next table, bunch of trees. Let's see if I can get a potion and drink it. Use. Yes, works. And if I get 2, I can put them in my hotbar. I could fill my hotbar with them and then use this one. Use. And they all get into a cooldown. And if I drink one of those, they all disappear. All right, so let's see if I can save the game, and let's try. All right, saved. And if I move away, move my stuff around, and then load, and no, I crash because I forgot here I also queue free the old item and stuff, but I don't need to do that. So slots I, put item null, and remove this one. Let's start the game. And I load back exactly where I was. So it seems to be working. And now for the hotbar, if I pick up my helmet there, put it down, and then I save, well, I get a problem because I forgot to put a S to my groups. All right, let's start again. So let's pick my helmet, put it in my hotbar, put it back on my head, and save. All right, it's saved. If I drop it on the ground and load, it comes back on my head. And if I use it, it's used also in the hotbar because they are using the same resource. But then if I drop the helmet and save the game, then I load, then we get a bug. Because here I'm using resource, but it's ItemManager. Oops. All right, let's start again. So, oh wait, it did work. Well, I do have my helmet in my hotbar. I cannot use it. And if I pick up this one on the ground and use this one, it's not the same helmet, so they're not used at the same time. Because usually when you would save your environment too, so that shouldn't be a problem. And if you have to save where you are, all the item on the floor, then the hotbar would have to save this link with the item. Maybe there could be some improvement on that part. But for now, it's a simple system and it worked well. So I think that's all for the refactor. It's been a lot of work to do this one. So I hope you like this. And yeah, and if you have any question on it, you can ask them in the comments below. Or if you want more help, you can come on my Discord. I'll be happy to help you. But yeah, if you find any bugs in there, let me know. And with that, thanks for watching. And a big thanks to my Patreon. And yeah, have a good day. I see you guys next time, I guess. Bye bye.